Good evening. Good evening and happy Wednesday to all of our Facebook viewers, followers, people who uh, do not know what this is about. My name is Darrell Monilli. I'm the Brooklyn chapter representative for the Salvia Esophageal Cancer Research Foundation. As a Brooklyn chapter leader, it's been my mission to raise awareness. And today we are being joined by Carrie Lewis, who is a survivor. Join me right now. So she is part of our Survivor series. How are you doing, Carrie? How's
I'm
everything? Nice to
I'm
see you.
good. I'm good. I'm just trying to share this on my own page, and I'm not sure how to do that.
Sure. I think there is an option. Not sure if, I mean, I know that once it's recorded, once it's
Yeah.
posted, you could definitely share it.
Yeah.
But you can play around with it while I briefly
Oh.
introduce the series. So I was just introducing our mission work, in which I hope is going to be a survivor series. We're looking for esophageal cancer survivors to join our mission, to join the interviews, to join the discussion, to give hope that there's more research, more funding, early detection. And our event in Brooklyn is on Saturday, September 18th at Marine Park. Actually, if you don't live in New York, you could still participate in the event. You could do it virtually. So you can sign up. You can walk in your neighborhood. You can run, and you can also register your pictures and your miles and your photos and however else you'd like to participate. You could do it wherever you are in the world. So you can go to my page after. I'm going to post the link to the event. Like I said, it's in real life this year. It's in person this year. Hopefully, I think it's still going to happen in person. So Carrie, if you do want to do it virtually, right now it's only like $20, and you could do it's a 3 mile walk. You walk around. You could even have Survivor on you could do whatever you'd like to that capacity, and it's open to everybody. The idea is to upload pictures to the event, just expressing hope and expressing, such as yourself, just hope that somebody will survive. And I have the
Yeah.
numbers that were posted recently. In 2021, over 19,260 people will be diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and the projected deaths are over 15,500 people. That's a lot.
Okay.
That's a lot. So, Carrie, I'm so honored to be speaking with you and to have you share your story. So, just briefly introduce yourself to people who may not know you, to the hundreds of friends and to the hundreds of friends of why you decided to speak to us about your survival story. Because so many survivors are a little weary about sharing their story, or there's survivor's guilt. Some people say, well, how did I survive? This person didn't survive. Like my father was given the typical 2 to 5 years, and he was a statistic, unfortunately, and I didn't know esophageal cancer was a cancer. So tell us a brief background. You had told us previously in the teaser that you had over 2 decades of heartburn and digestive complications. So just give us a rundown of your story. Like what were you doing at the time when you started having it, you were diagnosed? So I'm going to give the floor to you, and thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
What was I doing when I was diagnosed? I was working full time. I was living life. I was throwing axes twice a week in a league. I have my grandkids at least one night a week overnight. With my friends, just doing my thing. I honestly didn't know I was sick. And then when I was diagnosed, it truly is a gut punch. And then very quickly after that, I was diagnosed as stage 4. And then you get the rundown, the stats and what they're willing to do for you. And it was very frustrating to me because I had been to my doctor every year for a physical, like you're supposed to do to take care of yourself.
Right.
And I mentioned it every year that I had all this heartburn, and she never really did much. She just said, don't eat spicy food before you go to bed. Don't eat 3 hours before you go to bed. But I just wish that at some point in those 27 years that she would have suggested maybe just getting a scope done.
That's a long time to deal
It's a
with
very
those.
long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah.
So what indicated to you that something just wasn't right? That there was more going on here than just, oh, I'm eating some, some sauce, I'm drinking some of this, and
Right.
yeah.
Well, the heartburn really kind of was secondary because it had always been there. I ended up going to see a doctor because I had just a twinge in my side. I don't even want to call it a pain, but it
Right.
was consistent and it wasn't going away. And so I went, and the doctor, I went to the ER, and
Mm-hmm.
they sent me for an ultrasound because I thought maybe I had gallstones. I was the right age for that. I was overweight. So it seemed like something that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And they did an ultrasound, and the doctor said to me, your gallbladder is unremarkable, which I found very hard to believe. And she said, but you have several masses on your liver, and I think it's cancer. And I thought, holy cow, it was just like that. And I thought, well, there's no way, because cancer doesn't run in my family. So she said, you need to go urgently to get a CAT scan done. So I did. They got me in 2 days later, and they did the CAT scan. And then I went to see a liver specialist because at that time they were still thinking liver cancer. I went to see the
Mm-hmm.
liver guy. He said, it's definitely cancer. He said, you've got some other stuff going on. I want to have a better look. He sent me for a scope, very first scope I ever had, a biopsy of my liver, CAT scan, MRI, just the usual stuff. And I went back to see him after all that testing, and he said, you have stage 4 esophageal cancer. It's a squamous cell carcinoma. And at that point, he said, there's really nothing we can do for you. He said, I'm going to send you to see an oncologist. He said, but it'll be
Mm-hmm.
palliative care at best if you opt to go that route. And then he just said, do you have any questions? And I thought, questions? My head is swimming. I don't even know
Right.
my own
It's
name.
be
So
overwhelmed, just to put it
it was,
mildly. Right.
and it was so blunt. It was just so blunt. I'd never heard of esophageal cancer. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
I thought that I was looking at liver cancer. So he did send me to see a radiation oncologist first.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I didn't really have a lot of symptoms of anything in my esophagus other than I had this heartburn. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt just a couple of months leading up to that I was getting full a lot sooner than I normally did. I wasn't eating as much, but I
Right.
didn't really think much of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Vegas, and while I was in Vegas, there was one day that I was there that I really didn't feel well. But the heat was 108 degrees. I don't know who goes to Vegas in August, but
They do.
that's not happening again. Um, but it was just, I didn't feel great. I felt kind of almost like I was very woozy. So I went and had a nap and didn't think anything of it again. And it was right after I got back from Vegas, like about 3 days after I got back from Vegas, that I ended up going to the hospital with this, whatever this was in my side.
Right.
So, that's why I couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm living a normal life. And I find that with a lot of people that are diagnosed with this, that
Mm-hmm.
you almost don't have any symptoms until it's almost too late.
Right.
So what I would like to see happen is for family doctors at that level to start getting more involved in testing for this. I mean, they're all over you for breast exams,
Mm-hmm.
colonoscopies, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Well, I think the chronic heartburn, acid reflux, I think those are the warning signs. But
yeah,
as opposed to cancers that people may have, heartburn, a normal person such as myself can have heartburn as a consequence of eating too much of something.
right,
So it's almost like the symptoms associated with esophageal cancer, like my father, like, being Italian, you love the pizza, you love the sauce,
right,
you love that stuff, and you don't want to associate that suffering and that discomfort
right.
with a cancer.
Yeah,
So in a way, people do say, well, you can have chronic heartburn, doesn't mean you have esophageal cancer. So
exactly.
I think the goal, I think, for our mission is, if you have heartburn, let's say for a year, maybe a
Right.
year or two,
Right.
let's start the scope. Let's do an endoscopy. Let's
Right.
see what's going on. You know, so you didn't have a tumor. You actually said that it was the lining of your esophagus that the esophagus that it affected.
Yeah, it was just a thickening of the
Thickening.
esophagus. But
Mm-hmm.
by the time that I was diagnosed, and so I was diagnosed with the liver cancer September 5th, then they changed the diagnosis on October 15th to esophageal cancer.
Wow.
Here in Canada, we celebrate Thanksgiving a little bit earlier than you guys do. So that October 15th was the Tuesday right after Thanksgiving. So our Thanksgiving's on a Monday. And that
Right.
Thanksgiving, I actually did have trouble swallowing and getting food down.
Now,
So I
what did
tried,
that feel like? Did it, because I'm just reliving like my father. Like my father um, initially felt it. He actually had a tumor here. So we were out to dinner one time and the food just wouldn't go down. Like it
right.
just wouldn't go down and it was over. I'm like, that's weird. Like, why would your food just, like I
Right.
said, not knowing what it is, like, why isn't it going down?
Yeah.
What is the problem here? And you panic because, well, if I can't eat, I can't
You can't live.
eat anything. What
Yeah.
was your first thought? What was your first
Panic for sure.
the sensation?
Yeah, it was when I couldn't get it down. I mean, you don't feel like you're choking because that's not the same pipe. I
No, right.
actually
Well,
didn't know.
it's more of like it just doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So mine was right at the junction of where your esophagus meets your stomach. So I could get it down that far, but then
Wow.
nothing. And no matter what you do or how much water you have, for a while there, I was trying to kind of walk it down and just keep moving and bend different
Right.
ways. I think everybody with this cancer has tried all the tricks.
Right.
But
Because you
really,
don't know that there's really no what you don't know what's physically going on. You don't know
that's
the
right.
mechanics of how your body is
Yeah.
trying to process the food while it's attacking you.
Well, I had no idea that we had two different tubes, one for air and one for food. I didn't even know that
Right.
until all
Right.
of
You don't
this.
think of that. Right.
No. But my thing was that I wasn't panicked about not being able to get it down because you could always get it back up. It was just, it was so frustrating. It almost felt like a failure. Everybody can eat. Worms eat. Birds
Right.
eat. You know, and
Right.
I just felt like my body was betraying me. I thought this is something that you do from the second that you're born.
Right.
And now I can't do it. And I mean, thankfully I had some extra weight to lose and I lost 51 pounds in less than 2 months.
Wow, that's a lot.
It was a lot, but it was so fast from me being in Vegas and not really feeling like too much was going on to just after Thanksgiving, not being able to eat much of anything.
Right.
You know, and you go to a soft food diet and then you go to a liquid diet. And I started radiation on November the 4th and I finished it on November the 19th. In that period, my esophagus shut down completely. I couldn't get a sip of water through me. So
Wow.
radiation twice, they gave me a bag of fluid just to kind of keep me hydrated because radiation is hard.
It burns. I mean, it's literally burning out.
It is. Yeah.
Burning. It's literally taking a torch and burning it out, which is
It is.
it's really rough. I mean, it's not as bad as chemo. Chemo's the whole.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Chemo
another
affects
battle.
all your organs too.
Yeah.
Because mine wasn't a tumor, I didn't have the direct hit of radiation. So I didn't get the external burns. Right. So the machine actually went around me and did it that way. So, and it was, I mean, I didn't get the external burns, but because it was going, it doesn't just hit where your cancer is, it goes, you know, this much around it. So that then took in my stomach as well. And then I was so nauseous and I just I couldn't eat, but I couldn't get anything down anyway. Right. So I ended up, I did the radiation. They wouldn't sign me off to go to chemo because I couldn't eat. So finally the radiation doctor said to me, he phoned me on a Thursday and I was in Walmart and he said, I want you to go to the ER right now. And I said, okay, well, it's my grandson's Christmas concert in like half an hour. I'm going to that. And he said, go to that and then go to the hospital. Wow. So I went to the hospital and they admitted me for what they call failure to manage your own secretions, which just means you can't swallow your own spit. I had barely a pinhole. So I was in the hospital, and those kidney basins that they give you to be sick in, I must have filled 12 of them in an hour just because nothing was going down.
Right.
I honestly didn't realize how sick I was at that point. I just thought, well, it's no big deal. They'll just open up my esophagus and I'm going to be fine.
Right.
And then my palliative care doctor came in to see me, and he had given me a DNR to sign. And I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, I really want you to sign this. And I said, well, I don't want to sign it. I'm not signing.
It's a very, you either have to go all the way, or you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not at the end yet.
Yeah.
It's a very
Well,
tough thing to.
I didn't feel like I was at the end, and he
No.
kept
Good
shoving
for
it
you.
at me, and I refused
Excellent.
it. And then he said, Carrie, you might as well sign it because you're going to be dead in 2 months anyway. And that was really the
I'm
first
sorry, my face is showing my reaction, but that's terrible. It's very discouraging.
It just made me so angry. It was the first time that really, like, I saw 8 doctors before this. They had all told me that you have, less than a year. If you're lucky and things go well, you might get 18 months out of this. But this was the first time that it really kind of was brought to my attention that at the end of this, I'm going to die. Me.
Yeah.
So I asked him to leave my room. I was admitted. I went to the room that they put me in. And he came back a few days later, and he said, do you want to talk? And I just said, get out of my room. I can't even entertain this idea. I have a family. There's no way. So I was in the hospital, and apparently, I fell through the cracks and they forgot about me. So I was there for 8 days before I got the dilation done to open my esophagus. They transferred me to another hospital for that. I had the dilation, and then they sent me home. But in the meantime, I had been given an IV at the first hospital, and it was just so irritated. And I asked them to take it out, and they said, no, we need to have an open vein. I said, okay, but nothing's attached to it. And anyway, they refused. So before I went home, they took it out. And I said to the nurse, it's really sore, and I don't feel well. I really don't feel like I should be going home. Part of it, I think, was that doctor was still in my head that I was that sick. And they sent me home. I got home. I had a fever of, it was 40 or 41. Oh, in US, I guess that's 104, 106, somewhere in there. So I went back to the hospital, and I had an infected blood clot in my arm from that IV. So in all of this, I'm just thinking, I've got to get to chemo because that's going to be my only chance. I have to do something. But because I had been so sick and couldn't eat, and then I had this blood clot, they obviously wouldn't treat me. So I stayed in the hospital until January 7th when it was finally all cleared up. So I was there almost 5 weeks. And finally I got to go to chemo. And I was really grateful for that because I thought, if I'm going to have a chance, this is it. I felt better after getting out of the hospital. I went for my treatments. And it wasn't bad. The chemo honestly wasn't as bad for me as the radiation was. But I think because I wasn't able to eat during the radiation, that might have made it harder. But the chemo wasn't too bad. At that point, I could eat. I mean, you have all the typical chemo stuff. I mean, you're not feeling great. You're tired. But
it depends on the dose and how they're administering it, how often.
Yes.
Like for me, my father, he was an inpatient chemo. He got it every day. He stayed there for 4 days. He got it every day, knocked out. Some people could stay. I guess you have it in, in hour sessions, like infusion, or sorts. Or it depends on like you're saying, the state of your physical health, and also the doses they're giving you, and how they're distributing the doses. But that's great to hear that you actually, you wanted to have the treatment.
I did, because I mean, I was getting nothing but bad news from every doctor. And I thought, I have to try something, and I don't know what else to do other than to listen to these doctors.
Well, because I mean, did you know anybody at the time? Were you on social media at the time speaking to anybody about options?
After I was first diagnosed on October 15th with the esophageal cancer, I came home from that appointment, and my daughter came over. And she started working her Facebook with looking up these sites for, for help. And
Right.
she found an esophageal, just a support group. So she said the first thing that she scrolled, I mean, she found somebody who was still surviving after, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years, but I just thought, okay, I'm going to latch on to this guy because he's figured this out.
Right.
And it was great. He messaged me back right away and we had a chat and he helped calm me down. I met a lady named Gail, who I think is watching. She was my mentor through all of this. She had, yes, she was by my side. 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all of it. She was there for all of it and held my hand and cried with me and prayed with me and talked me through it. So I am so grateful for her, but there are so many people who are willing to help. And I really think that if we can pull together and lean on each other, it makes a big difference.
Right. And people to find each other. My father was diagnosed over 10 years ago. It was, well, now in October, he'll have been gone for 11 years. And there was really no Facebook groups.
Right.
And if I had known that, I don't even think they existed back then because, to be personally, Facebook was just, growing, people were just getting to know each other. So there were no groups on Facebook. The 2007, 2008, back then, I would love to have connected with somebody because my father had asked me, he's like, well, should I have the surgery or should I go with the chemo? And surgery was just cutting out the esophagus and then just connecting the stomach to, to the rest of the system. And some people are faced with, and what the next topic I want to discuss is life after survival. And my father was faced with, well, should I get surgery? And the thing is, surgery is maybe a month or two of healing, eating out of a feeding tube, long hospital stays. And then I guess the next question is quality of life. What's your quality of life? So let's just talk about the clean scope. So when did you get your first clean scope? Share that magical moment when you got the first clean scope.
Well, I had done 11 of 12 full Fox treatments. Wow. And I had a scope done on June 5th of 2020. And on June 11th, the doctor called me because of COVID, you can't go. So she called me to give me the results of the scope. And honestly, I mean, I always hoped, but I was trying to be realistic about it too. So I expected, there would be some still here or there. We were going to continue with treatments because in the beginning, you're told when you're stage 4, you will be on chemo for the rest of your life. It's like for as long as you can handle it. So that was sort of what my plan was just to keep doing it as long as I could. And she called and she said, Carrie, I don't know what's going on here, but there's nothing showing up on this scan.
Oh, so another question. Were you feeling different? Were you able to eat? Were you able to drink? Like, did you notice? And how did you notice? Like, what were you eating? Because most people who are even getting chemo, they don't have an appetite. They don't feel right. They feel nauseous. So how did you feel like, what you were doing, your fight was working?
I did feel better. Now, the more chemo that you do, the harder it is. And, the more tight, it kind of piles up on itself. And, but I was eating, but I kind of chalked that up to the dilation that I had at the hospital to open up my esophagus. Plus the chemo, I figured, was shrinking some of that thickening.
Right.
So I was eating fairly well, but again, because of chemo, you're not overly hungry. Everything tastes awful, and it's just, it's not, but I could eat. I mean, I could eat whatever I wanted.
Right, that's great.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I mean, a lot of things went right for me, and I know that so many things go wrong with this.
Right.
But when she called me to say that there was no cancer on that scan, I was supposed to go for my 12th and final chemo the next day. So I said to her, do I still go for chemo tomorrow? And she said, no. She said, there's nothing there to chemo.
Wow.
So, yeah,
amazing.
I was amazed. So the first thing I did, I called my mother, and I couldn't even talk. I was bawling. I was in shock, and I thought, how can this even be? But I called my daughter, and a couple of friends, and I called my boss, and I cried through all that conversation too.
Right,
But
right. That's amazing. I love
it,
that. It's great.
yeah, it was something, and my doctor was fantastic. She still is fantastic. So
Mm-hmm.
I had that scan done on June 5th. I got the results on the 11th, and I had another scan in September. And she had told me, be prepared in September that we'll be back to chemo. I'm not sure what's going on here, but this kind of cancer doesn't just go away.
Right.
So I thought, okay. So she said, have a great summer, have the best summer of your life. So I did have a good summer. But again, I was coming off of the chemo. So it takes a long time to get all that out of your system. And then in September, I went back to the scan, and I was kind of prepared mentally. I was hopeful still, but I mean, I was prepared that I would end up going back. And she called me again, and she said, still clean. And I thought, oh my God.
Wow.
So then she said, we'll scan you again in December. And I said, well, can we wait till January? Because I don't want to ruin Christmas for my family.
Right.
So she said, sure, we'll do January. So January 2nd, I think it was, she got me in for a scan, and I went in to that appointment, and she was dancing on the way in, and she said, Carrie, I don't know, but just keep doing what you're doing.
That's amazing.
So
your body just.
It was. And then she said, we're going to take your port out. And that scared me, because I thought, well, if you take out my port, and when this comes back, I'm going to have to go through all this again.
Well, you had the option of keeping it, don't you?
I did have the option of keeping it. But to be honest with you, I was tired of going to the clinic every 4 weeks to have it flushed. And it was just another reminder.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I went, and I had it removed. That went well. And then we did another scan the end of April. I got those results May 6th. Wow. And she had said, well, you're the talk of the tumor board today. She said, now.
That's great.
She said, now.
That's what you want.
Yes, it is. Yeah. She said, now I don't know what to do with you. She said, we're going to send you for a PET scan, and I don't want you to be concerned, but probably there will be some cells that light up. And I said, okay, but what does that mean? She said, it means nothing until it shows up on a CAT scan. She said, most people, if we gave them a PET scan, would have some cancer cells floating around here or there. So I thought, okay, well, I prepared myself to go for the PET scan, and I thought, they're going to tell me that I have some cancer cells, and it's just what it is. So I went, I had the PET scan done. In that time, and it was, I think, 2 weeks before I got the results. So in that time, she said, I also want to send you for an endoscopy and biopsies, because probably this cancer that's regrowing is in your scar tissue, and that's why we can't see it with the CAT scan. So I thought, okay, well, they're pretty sure that it's still there. So I agreed, obviously. And I said, what happens if it is there? She said, well, then she said, you have an option here. She said, we're putting surgery back on the table for you, which is unheard of for stage 4 patients. So I thought, and I said to her, that's pretty big. I said, if this was your story, would you have that surgery? And all she said to me was, it's a really big surgery.
Yeah.
And I thought, even she isn't really on board with this.
On a human level, some doctors, I think, especially in this cancer, unlike, other cancers where it can be isolated.
Right.
And move, but there's always a chance of it spreading, but more so because it's so intense, and it's
very aggressive.
Yeah, it's very complicated, and it's very complicated surgery, and you risk your life, because that could be the end of it. I think for a lot of people, the surgery could be the end of it, and I
think it is for a lot of people. I think that the surgery at that point, you're very weak, and that surgery affects almost every organ. And, there's so many complications that come along with that surgery. There's very few people that I know that have the surgery with no complications and just get on with it.
Well,
I'm not saying,
even months or years after,
yeah,
because
it's a,
you're not
it's big.
eating, your
Hmm.
body isn't the same.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, let's just put it out there for people who are diagnosed at stage 1 or 2.
Right.
If
For
they are
sure.
diagnosed at that stage and they
Yeah.
have the surgery and their body can repair,
Right.
that
Right.
might be a scenario that can work for an earlier stage.
Right. And they're
You
very
know,
successful. Yeah.
yeah,
They're very
and that's a conversation that I would like to have with a stage 1 or 2 cancer, so a
right.
esophageal cancer survivor is, you were diagnosed in stage 1. How were you able to catch it at stage
Right.
1 or 2? Because at stage
Exactly.
4, it's so advanced, and
Yeah.
there's so many complications because it's such a complicated, and the spread, and also, like I said, you don't eat, your body breaks down. So
Yeah.
now it's not, the cancer is out of you, but your body is just not operating
Right.
the same,
Well,
and it just can't.
I went 9 weeks with no food, and the last 2 weeks of that with no fluids either.
Wow. Did
So
they
I
give you
can
an
tell you,
IV with anything, or did you take any?
they gave me an IV at the radiation center twice with fluids,
Mm-hmm.
but really not a lot. But um, when I was at the hospital for the dilation, there I also had, I think they gave me 3 bags of IV because I was pretty
Wow.
dehydrated. But I
Wow.
can tell you that not eating and not eating properly affects you mentally, not just
Right.
physically, but
Right.
it mentally, you start to kind of go a little bit crazy without nutrition.
Right. Well,
So,
that's what I was gonna say. The quality of life
yeah,
after survival.
right.
You know, that's a big question, because there are so many little survivors. Those who do survive, is there hope for a quality of life?
Yes, there absolutely is. There
Mhm.
sure is. When my PET scan came back clean and those biopsies of the scar tissue came back clean, I thought, okay, so I'm just going to get on with my life instead of sitting in this holding pattern waiting for the next scan.
Right.
Um, but with COVID, it's hard too, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that I wanted to do, kind of tick it off a bucket list because
Right.
I didn't know how much remission time I would have.
Right. Right.
So I wanted to do what I could, but with COVID that sort of put up some roadblocks for me. But
Of
um
course, as for many people who are fighting it, their treatments might have been delayed or
right. Oh,
stopped.
and not being able to have somebody go with you for those treatments. I mean, i'm
Right.
i'm fine on my own. I'm fairly strong and independent anyway,
Good
but
for you.
I just felt so bad going in there and seeing the people, the elderly people that really needed help to get
Hmm.
into the cancer center and had to be dropped off in the driveway.
Right.
It was, and I think that has to be very, I don't know. I just think that it really just sucks the life out of you.
Yeah, and you feel isolated. You feel like you're fighting
Yeah.
alone.
You're fighting alone.
Right.
And this
Yeah.
is a huge beast to fight.
Mhm. Absolutely. And
It
I
is.
think the next point I wanted to make, and I know that, I don't know if any of you or any people watching will wind up being medical professionals, but we did touch on our personal discussion that many EC people who are diagnosed should be their own advocates. And
Yes.
how do you be your own advocate for a cancer that you don't even know?
Yeah, you don't understand.
Right. How do you be an advocate for yourself?
Yeah.
Because, you're suffering the heartburn, you can't swallow. And now you have to tell your doctor, you
Yes,
know, and
absolutely. Yeah.
right. So I would think, you tell your doctor something is not right. I've been suffering from this. And it's a very hard thing when, endoscopies are not traditionally, covered, like mammograms,
Right.
colonoscopy,
But they should
or,
be.
a guy looking for prostate screening. There
Right.
is no screening. It's not like, oh, when you turn 50, we're going to give you a scope just to see what's going on
Yeah.
or whatever, So, what
Well,
do
I
you have?
think the
Yeah.
median age for this cancer is dropping. When I was diagnosed, and I mean, I'm still fairly recent, I was diagnosed in October of 2019. So
Right.
the median age was 62, and it was generally males. Um,
Right.
but now I've met so many people, and a lot of them are women, and
Hmm.
almost all of them are less than 62 years old. So
Right.
I think that scope almost should be started Like, it's a painless procedure that takes 5 minutes. Why can't we
Right.
do it when we turn 30? If it's
Right.
good, do it again when you're 35. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that you have to do repeatedly on a monthly or yearly basis even.
Right.
But just
But
keep
you
it
know,
running.
like we can fight for that, and I think part
Mhm.
of my mission, in my long term, I think a long term goal, which would be extremely difficult to achieve, will be some legislation where, you know, if you've been suffering heartburn
Yeah.
or a number of symptoms, you know, you need, you know, insurance companies need to cover, or there needs to be free scopes
Yep.
for esophageal cancer, or even stomach cancer, throat cancer.
Yes.
There's a slew of digestive cancers that are not covered or
Right.
not mandated,
Yeah.
you know. So I
That's
think
right.
that would be one of the things, if you know, if my mission moves forward. I've been doing this for 3 years now. I've been the chapter leader for 3 years. Um, so it took me a while to finally say, hey, let's do something. Let's bring awareness for it. And like you were saying, like, I was surprised to meet a female at your age who wants to speak about it, because most of the people who have it diagnosed, who passed away,
Right.
are the older males. Maybe it's
That's
from
right.
drinking, overweight, lifestyle, and there's
Yeah.
Barrett's esophagus. It's
Yeah.
just the narrowing of the esophagus, and just general lifestyle. So
Yeah.
who knows if there's more people such as yourself, especially women don't think that they're going to get it.
Well, I think that women are just, and I mean, no disrespect to men. Women are just busy, you know? I mean, we're doing the kids, we're doing the house, we're doing the jobs, and I know a lot of men do that too. But I
Right.
think that for women, especially mothers, we tend to kind of put ourselves last. I have a bit of
Right.
heartburn, I'm going to pop some Tums. I'll mention it the next time I'm at the doctor.
Right.
Had
Right.
I known then what I know now, I would have insisted. I mean, I certainly found my voice in the medical system after diagnosis. But
Right.
before that, you know, you always think, well, the doctor said, so it's
No.
fine
Right.
because the doctor's not worried. But
Right.
now I realize that a doctor, um, they're, although well educated, they are only humans. They're only
Right.
humans. And if you take your car in for a diagnosis and you don't like what that mechanic says, you take it to another mechanic. We
Right.
have the
Or is there a
right to do
second
that.
opinion? Second opinion, third opinion?
Exactly. Yeah. And
Right.
we have the right to do that too. And I wish that I would have, you know, just been more aggressive about that before I was ever diagnosed, you know, maybe 10 years ago
Right.
when the
Right.
heartburn had
When
been
you were
going on.
when you were having the
Right.
the heartburn, and
Right.
right.
Because this is
But
an
you don't
aggressive
think about
cancer.
that.
And by the time that you're diagnosed with this cancer, you're burning daylight already. You have
Right.
to get
Your time is
treatment.
your time is precious, and you're
Yep.
already, well, I think that's the thing, like you're saying, with self-advocacy. People are just taking it for granted that they have a symptom that's not it's not really related to cancer.
Right.
Unfortunately, you know,
Right.
it's something I can have heartburn today and not have it for a month from now, and then it keeps
Right.
coming back. I'm like, well, maybe I just shouldn't eat that, or maybe I just shouldn't
Right.
drink it, you
Yep.
know. But definitely, you know, I think there is room for hope, and I
There
think
is. There is.
just share your message with us, and we'll wrap it up in like 5 minutes. So, and it was just great. It's a great story. I'm so glad. Maybe you can encourage other EC survivors to join us, because I would like to do a series. I'd like to do a
Yep.
esophageal cancer survivor series, at least maybe one survivor a month, or one every 2 weeks,
Yep.
and it would be conducted in the same fashion. You know, telling their story, giving hope, and just giving different. You know, obviously everybody experiences this differently, but the
Yes.
message is for hope. The message is for,
There
you
is
know,
hope. And, you know,
yeah.
there's a lot of headway being made on the natural side of cancer cures too. Um, you know, I know that the whole cancer world is talking about this RSO oil. Um, and I'm telling you, I truly believe that it works. I
Oh,
really
wow.
do believe that it works. I do. I've been on it since March 6th of 2020. And
Wow.
3 months later was when I got my first clean scan.
Wow,
So,
very
I mean,
interesting.
I'm not selling anything, but I am saying that people should be doing their research. There are other things. I still did the chemo and the radiation because I do believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
but I also believe that you can help yourself naturally as well, because the chemo is hard on you. And if you can protect your body, you know, however you can, there's all kinds of natural stuff that you can do to help it along. But just don't give up. You know, I mean, like I said, I had a doctor telling me that I'd be dead in 2 months. And, you know, I kind of use that as fuel and just anger to kind of push myself forward. And I just thought, this POS is not going to be right.
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 Just a question to any of our viewers. If anybody has any questions for Carrie, we're open to questions. If anybody has questions of anything that we haven't covered.
Can you read it? I don't have my glasses on.
References. So Shane Gallup was commenting on the natural options.
Yeah. Shane is going to be your next survivor on here.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
He
is well on his way. Yeah.
That's great. If he would like to be interviewed, we would do the same thing. What we do first, as part of the Survivor series, I would speak to you one-on-one, as I did with Carrie. It was a great conversation, just briefly going over your history and, you know, just highlighting, you know, the highs and lows, because there's going to be really bad lows, really great highs.
Yep.
And just giving hope for people and giving guidance to people who have never, like I said, heard of this cancer. You never know. This is also going to be posted on the Salgia Esophageal Cancer Research Foundation page. It's going to be posted on my page and Carrie's page. Hopefully, Carrie, you share it with other people. Yep. And we want to get more people on board. So you never know, somewhere down the line, someone will find your information, this information, useful and resourceful, and they'll really, you know, grasp it. And if they have no hope, you know, like you said, there is hope, and always you find a way to fight it.
Yep. Your mental state is probably your biggest defense. You have to stay good in the head. And you know, I mean, your head drives the train, and if you can keep your head in the right place, your body will follow. But you have to stay positive, even on the crappy days. Right. I know it's hard, but it does help.
Excellent. Oh, Fabi commented. How are you, Fabi? Fabi's a good friend of mine. She is a big supporter of our mission, and she had a family member pass away last year of esophageal cancer. So I just want to say hi to Fabi, and she's a big supporter, big friend of mine, one of my best friends, and she just thanks you for sharing her story. And thank you, everybody, for commenting. Thank you to all of Carrie's networks and friends for joining us. So we're going to wrap it up for now. You know, this is going to be in the archives, and anybody who wants to watch, it's going to be shared publicly on my page. So any of your friends who want to share it publicly, any of your family who wants to share it publicly, we want to get the word out. We want people to, you know, keep hope alive. And you know, we're trying to fight for early detection. We want more tools. We want to research more tools to detect it earlier, so that you can fight it earlier, survive it earlier, and have a better quality of life. Because my father never got a chance to do that, because I wasn't connected to anybody to relay that information to him. So I do all of this in his honor. And you know, it feels good to talk to somebody who made it through. So I would love for you to spread the word, and I would love to interview another individual who is strong enough and made it through. Even if they had the surgery, especially if they had the surgery, that would also be a very interesting conversation to have on life after that, better, worse, and how is it? What is it like? Because I would like to know what the limitations are. So many questions.
There are.
But thank you so much, Carrie. Any ending words at the moment?
Just advocate for yourself. Go to the doctor. Ask for scopes. If something's wrong, stick with it. Just keep pushing until somebody pays attention.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. I wish I would have known that 11 years ago. But,
me too.
You know, now, yeah. But that's so great. Thank you so much for joining me, Carrie, and thank you for joining our mission. I'm grateful for you. We're going to stay friends for a long time.
Yes, we are.
I'd love to follow your story. I'm going to send you some bracelets. I have some bracelets I got today for our event in September. And like I said, we're doing it here in Brooklyn. Maybe someday you can come to New York and join us.
Yeah.
I'll show you around the city. It's a great city.
Perfect.
We'll go sightseeing together. I would be honored to show you around, to be your host.
I would love to come.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for all you do.
Oh, you're very welcome. Have a great night, and many prayers to you, and sending hugs.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon.